All right, let's break down one of the most fundamental rules in modern security today, and that is requiring multi-factor authentication, MFA, for absolutely everyone. Now, that sounds simple enough, right? But as we're about to see, it's those little exceptions to the rule that's where things can get really, really dangerous.
It's kind of wild to think about, but it's true. In the few minutes it takes to go through this, thousands upon thousands of passwords will be stolen. That thing we used to think of as our main line of defense, it's quickly becoming our biggest liability. And honestly, that's why so many cyber attacks succeed. They're not always super sophisticated. They just prey on our reliance on this one single, outdated point of failure.
So that really is the big question, isn't it? How do you keep your account safe when passwords just aren't cutting it anymore? I mean, think about it. If the lock on your front door was super easy to pick, you wouldn't just use one lock, right? You'd add a deadbolt, maybe an alarm. It's the exact same idea for our digital lives. We have to move past relying on just something you know, like a password, and start adding other layers, like something you have, say your phone, or even something you are, like your fingerprint.
Okay, so to really get our heads around the solution, we've got to first get real about the problem. And that means a pretty big shift in how we even think about security. We have to let go of these old school ideas about trusted networks and secure perimeters.
And that brings us to the modern security mindset, zero trust. It's actually a really simple idea, but it is so powerful. The whole principle is never trust, always verify. We just stop assuming that because you're on the company's Wi-Fi, you're automatically safe. Instead, we flip that around. We assume every single access request could be a threat, and so we verify it. Every single time.
And that's the key takeaway here. If we're going to verify every single request, well, a password by itself just isn't enough proof. It's only one piece of the puzzle, and frankly, it's a pretty weak one. We need more evidence, more factors, to actually establish that trust for that moment in time.
All right, so this naturally brings us to the MFA mandate. Let's dig into why it works so well and, this is the important part, how we can actually enforce it without accidentally creating a bunch of dangerous backdoors.
Multi-factor authentication isn't some magic silver bullet, but it is without a doubt the single most effective thing we can do to stop most account takeovers. It really is the bedrock, the foundation of any good zero-trust strategy. Okay, so it's one thing to say, let's use MFA, right? But it's a whole other challenge to actually roll it out consistently across an entire organization, with all the different people, all the apps, all the devices. And that's exactly where policy comes in to save the day.
Now, if you're in the Microsoft world, the tool you're going to use is called Conditional Access. And honestly, the best way to think about it is just as a really smart if-then engine. It's simple. If a user tries to sign in and they meet certain conditions that we set, then we can grant them access.
Building one of these policies is actually pretty straightforward. It boils down to three main steps. Step 1 is assignments. Who or what does this rule apply to? Step 2 is conditions. What's the situation here? Where are they? What device are they on? What's the risk level? And then step 3, access controls. Based on all that, what do? Do we let them in? Do we block them? Or, and this is the most common one, do we ask for MFA? Okay, but now we get to the messy, real-world part of all this. Because a one-size-fits-all policy almost never works, right? People are always going to ask for exceptions. And managing those exceptions safely, well, that's absolutely critical.
And this is the big one we hear all the time. It's probably the most dangerous trap you can fall into. People ask, hey, what about our trusted locations, like the main office? If someone's already inside, on our network, do we really need to bother them with an MFA prompt? And on the surface, it kind of makes sense, right?
But that's where that old way of thinking completely falls apart. See, a trusted network isn't some kind of magical force field. The second an attacker gets a foothold on that network, maybe through a phishing email or some malware, that helpful MFA bypass you created just became their personal express lane into all of your systems.
So let's just lay it out, side by side. The dangerous way to handle this is to create a permanent exception that just turns off MFA completely for a big range of IPs. You basically set it and forget it, punching a permanent hole in your security. The safe way, though, is to treat that location as just one more signal. It's not an off switch. Any exception you make is temporary, it's super specific, and you're constantly reviewing it.
And this, right here, is the key mindset shift you need to make. Knowing that someone is signing in from the office, that's useful data. It helps your security tools make better decisions, maybe not flagging a login as impossible travel. But that data should inform the security decision. It should never, ever replace it.
So let's walk through a super common scenario. Imagine a company where maybe 5 years ago, an admin set up a policy to bypass MFA for the main office. And to make things easy, they used a really wide IP range just to cover all their bases.
Okay, now fast forward a few years. The company's network has changed, but nobody ever went back and updated that old policy. Now, an attacker steals a user's password and figures out a way to get onto that trusted network. And because of that one single forgotten exception, that stolen password is all they need. The MFA that should have been there to stop them, it's gone, completely bypassed.
So how do you fix it? Well, it's actually simple, but it's so important. You just get rid of that permanent bypass. You go back to enforcing MFA for everyone, everywhere, no matter their location. And that office IP address, it just becomes another signal that helps you calculate risk. And just like that, your protection is consistent again.
By the way, if you're finding this helpful, feel free to subscribe. We do these explainers all the time, breaking down tricky security topics.
Okay, so we've covered a lot. But if you only remember one single thing from our time here, please make it this.
Here it is. This is the one rule to remember. Apply MFA everywhere and treat every single exception as temporary. That's it. It's your guiding principle. And when you absolutely have to make an exception, you treat it like a ticking clock. It needs to be documented, it needs to have an expiration date, and you need to review it constantly.
When you stick to that one simple rule, you completely transform your security posture. You're no longer relying on a fragile old perimeter that can be easily broken. Instead, you're building a resilient, modern security model where protection actually follows your users no matter where they go.
And moving from a security model that's brittle and full of holes to one that's consistent and resilient, well, that's progress, actually.